What's up? Welcome to a new episode of Movie Schmovie. This is episode number 338. My name is Steve. I'm one of the co-hosts. And just like every episode, I'm joined by
Ron
and John.
That was good, guys. That was like the inflection was like bright.
Yeah.
Much like this light shining in my face.
Is that a new light?
For some reason, it feels very bright today. I don't know. It's the same light in the same setting I always use, but maybe Aaron adjusted it or something. But yeah, man, how you guys doing today?
Good.
Tired,
Wow.
but good.
Tired.
Yeah.
Tired feels like just like a normal thing, though. You know, good
does.
We were
feels
just
like
talking about
embrace the good. Embrace the good.
Yeah.
No, we were just saying, like, if you, I mean, it's an age thing for me. I do think having a kid exhausts you to a certain point. But it's like where if you stop to take note of what you're feeling after a certain hour, tired is just the word that springs to the top of the list. So yeah, there's a little bit of like keep moving, otherwise you'll just fall asleep. So that's why you guys don't see. I'm on a treadmill right
You got a little. I figured
Oh,
I
okay.
saw you get a little flow going there. I like it.
It's kind of a Flintstones thing. I'm powering the television upstairs.
I thought it was maybe when it was powering the Zoom, like your internet, your
okay.
hosting abilities.
If I get, that would be. I would be a little afraid that this podcast would be lost if I suddenly became so engrossed in what you guys were saying that I stopped moving my legs, and that would not be good. So
Right. True. Okay, cool. Well, this episode, the main purpose of this episode, we can finally talk about the Batman.
yes,
Batman's out on HBOMax this week. This will air Friday, but as of Monday,
We've all
it's
seen it.
available.
And PVOD, which I actually saw.
Is PVOD was PVOD already, or is that next week?
Oh, it was the same day.
Oh, same day as HBO Max. Okay.
Yeah, which is straight because they didn't really talk about that. Like it only there were two versions of the commercial. There was the HBO Max commercial, and there was a Batman one that said HBO Max and PVOD, and then they listed a chunk of stuff, and that's how I found out. Yeah.
Okay, that's awesome. So you got a lot of options to catch up on the Batman if you haven't watched it, but we'll talk about that now that we've all seen it later in the episode. But just like we normally do at the top here, we're going to go through a couple of news items that happened since last week's episode.
Mm-hmm.
Which one do you want to jump into first, Ronald? I know we kind of have a couple lined up here.
Netflix, and not for my usual slander. It's just I'm wondering. There was a report that first quarter. Netflix lost 200,000 subscribers, and that could be attributed to a bunch of things. But one of the things is that people are saying that the password sharing announcement may have prompted some people to do that, combined with the lack of content, the lack of content that is interesting to the parties that left the service. So I just wanted to talk to you guys about it. I mean, that's pretty significant, 200,000 subscribers dropping off. And it's guessed that maybe quarter two, it could be close to 2 million people. Because it's like the beginnings of a mass exodus from Netflix, possibly. So just running that by you guys. What do you
Yeah. I mean, I feel like it's something that was probably inevitable. I think that the Q4, the last earnings call they had, where same thing happened, where they missed some targets and like the stock took a huge hit after hours and into the following day, and took a lot of other stocks down with them, much like it did yesterday. Like today, we're recording this on Wednesday. I mean, I own Netflix shares, and it was very painful to watch. But I do think that it's probably something that is going to happen to all of these services. And I think, Disney and Warner Discovery, they definitely saw the impacts of it on their stock today too. But I think ultimately for Netflix, I mean, the real takeaway is that it may be the password announcement, and maybe like what's going on in Russia, like they stopped that over there. So like there's estimates that they lost, 700,000 subscribers due to that. So, there's all these factors, but the bottom line is that the growth has slowed, and they missed the target, and they lost subscribers for the first times in a decade. So, that's the real thing that just shook up the whole earnings call. And, the stock itself, and it's really all people are talking about today in the industry. You know, a lot of the things that I subscribe to, it's all over the place. You know, again, I think it's inevitable that this is going to happen. I think that these the quote unquote like streaming wars that we're in right now, you know, I think that it comes down to which ones are going to survive. And, you know, it's going to come down to 3 or 4, and there's going to be consolidation, and there's going to be mergers and all these things where things get bundled into some packages. But I think at the end of the day, personally, I think Netflix is going to, you know, survive that. And I think they're going to be one of the 3 or 4. I just think that it's going to force Netflix to kind of re-examine how they go forward from here. You know, I think, you know, in terms of what they're doing with their programming, with the scripted and unscripted television that they do, with how many movies they make and what the budgets are, what they let these big name filmmakers do with these movies, which is kind of what they've grown to be known for. You know, a lot of these huge names go to them for that very reason. They can just do whatever they want. But I don't think it's really netting them what they thought it would, especially because they really haven't broken through, you know, with Oscars in the big categories that they were hoping for even in the past few years. So it's going to be interesting, man. Like, you know, I think you're right. I think the next quarter is going to be even worse. You know, if I'm being honest, you know, the reality, if they do start doing the password stuff. Are you
being honest, Steve?
What's that?
Steve, are you being honest?
Well, I'm trying to like convince myself otherwise, because I feel like I want to hold these stocks.
Yeah.
You know, you don't lose money until you sell them. And, you know, I don't want to realize these losses quite yet. You know, I do think it'll turn around to some degree once some of this consolidation happens. But I mean, honestly, I think they just need to pivot a lot of things. I think they need to relook at like some of the budgets, what they're spending on these productions, on these original programming, identify the real marquee series that they have based on viewership, maybe be a little more transparent about viewership, you know, to make shareholders and, you know, basically the subscriber base more understanding of like what's really succeeding and what's maybe just sort of succeeding.
Yeah.
I really do think eventually too, like, you know, they said that they're going to have some sort of probably some ad supported version of the platform eventually, which I think is it's going to be weird to think about, but I think it's going to be something that all of these platforms are going to have, you know, like HBOMax already kind of has it going. And I think that they're going to probably be one of the top ones that make it through also. So they got a little bit of a head start on that. And I wouldn't be surprised if their numbers actually are better in terms of growth when they announce theirs next week. But I just think that they need to reevaluate how they're doing stuff. Like they can't be the way they have been and have been like kind of muscling through.
Yeah.
We talked about it before in this podcast, but one thing I kept thinking about, like, and a lot of people were saying, reading these analysis, like, I do think they need to find a way to manage like the buzz around a lot of their series that come out, you know, like we talk about, like maybe still having some of their, you know, series be all at once bingeable things, you know, like that Netflix kind of pioneered. But I think that they need to try to identify ways in which to keep certain series, like we talk about Stranger Things or even like Ozark, you know, the ones that are still around. The Witcher is a big one, Umbrella Academy, just some of these series that they have, like, so that they're just not all burning out within a week or two. You know, they just completely lose all value in terms of the cultural impact and the word of mouth and things like that. Because it would also like lower the churn rate. You know, it would keep people subscribed to the service and, you know, things like that. These factors, I just think it would help in the long run, but can't say it's a shock, especially after last quarter, but it is very, very bad for Netflix right now. They're kind of in damage control.
Yeah. I was just gonna say, I agree with you. So I think that they have to go. I've noticed something when it comes to Netflix. Netflix is seldom in the mouths of younger people anymore. I mean, it's like Tiger King and a couple of things. I think they need to work on the kind of like what HBO had with what's the name of the show that everybody's talking about?
Euphoria.
Euphoria. Like, you know, there's like I don't hear young people talking about Netflix quite the way that, I mean, it might be about the documentary or something like that. Like I saw a couple of tweets about White Hot, you know, the Abercrombie, but
Yeah.
their bread and butter should be maybe scripted things, and maybe trying to find this, like, you know, things that focus on like 16 to 25 to 30-year-olds going through shit that are super sexy. I mean, like, they don't have a lot of stuff like that where kids are like, yo, you know what I just watched the other day? Fucking, you know, it's there's none of that. Yeah, the conversations aren't there.
Is it cake?
Yeah, and the kids, and that's the key. Younger people need to be. It can't be like Netflix can't be Facebook for kids. And I think that they need to work on it becoming that soon, because it's been around for long enough. And I think they need to be careful of it becoming that for people. Like,
right.
I'm not saying it is there. I'm just saying that the identity of the service becomes like that. Like, oh, it's only murder documentaries and such. Like, you don't want that identity as a, you know, they're the mainstream. They're the WWE of it. You know, like the mainstream. They're the people that people look up to. It's the service that everybody kind of imitates in so many ways. So you got to get ahead of being the old people service. And I feel like I'm not seeing it trending the way that it used to be, you know, like and I think
but does anybody do that? Does anybody stay the main name brand forever? I mean, Netflix has had quite a run throughout this whole streaming time, and all this time we've known that this was going to happen. So I mean, I'm very curious about just if there is a way back to the kind of stability and dominance that they had. I just don't think that there is. And I think what Steve and you were kind of saying too, Ronald, about like we're seeing the whole thing change a little bit.
Yeah.
No one can sustain what they've been doing, the production they've been putting into these series that do kind of come and go. And like we've said it before on this show, you know, there's too many to watch. Like there's no way that this could continue the way that it has been forever, you know? And I don't even know, I can't quite picture what it looks like. All this ad supported stuff kind of worries me, because I do feel like that's one of the best things we've gotten away from. But yeah. I mean, there's a couple things I watch now. Better Call Saul, when it was on, I watched it live on YouTube TV with commercials, and I survived, you know?
Yeah.
It's almost a nostalgic thing to watch a show the way that you used to. I didn't even pause it or try to, you know? So I don't know. I think that the glut of content, and maybe even coming out of the last couple years where people have been sitting around watching more shows, it's like you either put on something that's like comfort food background noise type programming that you really don't give a shit what it is, or you're sitting down to really watch something. And I don't know. I think that there is something that's like the stuff that's not truly special is like meaningless. You know?
Yeah.
And there's so much of it. And I'll flip through a bunch of stuff where I'm like, that sounds like something I might watch, you know, but there'll be 20 things that I might watch. And then there's really only one thing I want to watch, or two things I want to watch. So it has become like the dispiriting thing where you used to go to a video store sometimes and walk around for 30 minutes and not be able to pick a movie. I sometimes will do that with streaming services. I'll just go from one to the next and then realize like, no, there's really nothing. I don't want to watch. I just feel like I want to watch television because there's so much I could watch. So I mean, I do think there's got to be some way that, Steve, they can refocus, like you said, and find those prestige shows and find that way of presenting it that interests people. But I just think, the Netflix reign, the era, we're living in it, and we've been in it for so long. It's this whole streaming era, and it's kind of, maybe it has reached an apex of what like companies will be willing to sink capital into in terms of the return they get, in terms of the eyes they get. But we've kind of been in this weird golden age of just projects just left and right, turning into 8 to 10 hour series, and I don't know, maybe that's a larger conversation to have about the actual content, whether it's started to become kind of samey and overly familiar too, even with all the big stars and everything. But I mean, I know that I sometimes will walk away from Netflix without watching anything after browsing through all that stuff, and that didn't used to be the case necessarily, but I say that knowing they've got a couple things coming up. Ozark, you mentioned, Stranger Things, you mentioned, that I'm definitely on the hook for. And so if you're looking at like, why do I keep the service, there's enough shows that I watch that are on Netflix that's why I keep it. But I think you're right. You don't hear people. It just doesn't seem like it's the buzzy imprint anymore, you know. And they do throw money at these movies and projects and collaborations that maybe they're fruitful in the long run in terms of subscribers or whatever. But if they're losing that many people in a month or a quarter, then it's like, obviously that's not working either. You know, the being the big dog with all the money to pour into stuff, that eventually reaches a limit too. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see. And we should mention to people, we talked about the password thing. We should explain what that is. Basically, they just started cracking down on people sharing passwords, which is hilarious that they still have which account are you, like when you go in, you can still choose which user you are. So it's a strange thing to say we can let you have multiple users, but we don't want anyone, you know, we don't want you sharing it with your kid who's in college anymore. What do you guys think of that? We never really talked about the password thing. Did that seem like an inevitable thing, or did it seem kind of like a stupid thing for them to announce because there's all it's going to do is alienate people at a time when their competition is super strong?
I know I know people that abuse the Netflix thing, like legit abuse it, but I think that I shared my Disney account. I don't know if you guys share your Disney account. I share my Disney account with 4 other people. And some of it is just like,
I want you to my family. I make them sign into a different account across the room if they're going to.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah. I get that. And you got to monitor that stuff because people, but yeah, you just, I do share my account with other people, but it does get a little weird when like, you got 10 people on one account and they're like timing how they're going to sign on. And like that, just get a fucking another account. Like all that acrobatics that you're doing, like it's like right. $20 a month. Like stop acting like it's killing you. You know what? One part of this that's bothering me, like as a human being, is the devaluing of art.
Yes.
You know what I mean? To tell, you know, as a person who creates art, we create this podcast, for somebody to be like $20 is too much for hundreds, if not thousands of movies. New shows come out constantly. It's in 4K. It's like, what is it? There's seldom any server issues. You know, there's always things that connect with you on some level. Like, I don't understand how people can tell you to your face that this is not worth the cost. I have to be honest. I'd spend $40 for that sort of service. Like, I'm surprised that things cost what they do, but that's because I like movies. I know what it costs. You right. know, I purchase digital films constantly. So like, you know, I feel the value of those movies. So for people to tell me that it's not worth that is a strange thing. And people, a guy said this to me and I've never forgotten it. People don't realize how much they love art until they don't have it. And if Netflix is like, we're done, people are going to miss that, man. I would miss the shit out of it. I complain.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's anywhere near that point.
No. But but you know what I'm saying, man. Like,
right.
Here's the thing, man. Whether people realize it or not, if they do enforce the password thing, there's going to be a mass exodus, which could affect the entire company, which could make them get eaten up by another company. Like this is a thing. It's a real. It's not impossible. It is happening. It's happened to bigger companies. You know, so right. Like, I think sometimes like the idea that something that has been on top for a long time can dilute the idea that money is money, and someone right. could buy, you know, 99% of the shares and then by default own the company. Like things like that happen constantly. So like, I just think they have to stay on their P's and Q's, especially hitting around this. If you're going to do the password thing, incentivize it. Like we need something that keeps us here after that change is done, if they make the change.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying.
That's kind of why I asked. It's like, I agree with wanting to pay for stuff, but it is like one of the benefits of this service. People use it that way. So I think it's an interesting thing to think of, like just what effect that could have, like if people are hanging on by a thread. But I kind of agree, if that's the difference between you loving a service and not, then you're not really part of their customer base anyway. You know what I don't know.
No, it's like if 10 people are using your account and you're timing it and all that stuff, like I just think that like maybe there's a little abuse of the service. If you have 7 people on it, that's cool. But like I'm kind of weird. Like maybe I'm kind of seeing the value in Netflix. Like I see the value in these services. I'm not saying that people should not share passwords, but how many people do you think is too much for sharing one account? Steve and John.
I don't know. I kind of think of it as like a family thing, but I know people.
Yeah, I was gonna
Yeah,
say
of course. Family, of course, family. I'd say your family and then a little bit of an extended family, like immediate family, couple people from the extended, you know?
Or anyone that you're in like a team of car thieves with, you know?
Yeah,
That's family.
absolutely. Yeah. Like I feel like Fast and the Furious.
Anyone that you go to Olive Garden with, that's family. Yeah. I don't know. There's a few ways these things can happen. Yeah. But that's what it's all about. Let's move on. We said we were going to spend a few minutes talking about the Netflix thing. What's our next news item? I guess I'll just throw this out there. Thor, Love and Thunder got a teaser. And, you know, everyone in my house enjoyed it and was fully on board the Taika train and what's happening with Thor and Chris Hemsworth. We just, you know, we couldn't have more confidence that this is going to be a fun movie. But I did see that there was a little bit of a backlash on Twitter, but I couldn't tell if it was people reacting to a backlash. I couldn't tell where there seemed to be some Taika backlash or people talking about like he's done or people don't like him anymore. But I saw more people reacting to someone's statement than I saw the statement. So it's one of those things where I was just like, okay, it's one of those Twitter things where if you look away for 30 minutes, it'll have taken care of itself. So I didn't know if you guys knew there's apparently some kind of backlash to this trailer, but I thought it was just a real crowd pleasing, like, hey, remember Ragnarok? Well, the same team is coming back. And also they're going to pay off Thor's character arc that we've been enjoying through Ragnarok and then into the Infinity War and Endgame film. So I really like everything I saw in that trailer. Made me interested to see where they're going with it, especially knowing who's at the helm.
The Latinx community has a word for that kind of stuff. Basura. Trash. Trash talk. It's ridiculous talk. This trailer looks incredible. I don't know why people would say that Taika's fallen off. I love the poster that has like He-Man Masters of the Universe vibes. It almost looks identical to
or Heavy Metal. Is that the other one looks like?
Yeah, Heavy Metal as well. It's just promising, and like this looks fun. It's like every frame looks fun, you know.
Yeah. And
the surprise that we got at the end of the trailer, that the most known unknown secret, you know, that kind of happened with a certain actress coming back was such a fun treat. And seeing her all buff on set is also so fun to see, man. What happened? Our arms look nuts. So I'm excited. I'm super excited.
Yeah, we're talking about Natalie Portman, who has beefed up for her return as Jane Foster in this movie. And she's even said in interviews that she's never had to work this hard before a film before. The Marvel, like what they make you do if you're going to be one of the people they need to beef up for one. Even if you're like a person who's supposed to look out of shape in a Marvel movie, I think they make you train for 6 months.
So we're saying that that's actually her beefed up. That's not prosthetics.
No, I don't think so. Like I didn't. No, I'm talking about
some of that shot might be some prosthetics, but she has talked about having a crazy exercise regimen. So
okay, I thought we were talking about that photo going around like of her on set with the T-shirt.
No, I saw like a vest sort of thing.
Oh, I've only seen the shot of her in the trailer where she looks normal, but definitely beefy.
Yeah. Okay.
I
saw the one going around Twitter. The one going around Twitter, like it's her like standing on set. I'm trying to scroll through and find it now, but of course I can't find it. But to me, it looked like very obviously not. Maybe it's her. Maybe it's legit. I don't know. It just looked weird. Hey, let me see if I can find it. Let's see if you show this.
Oh yeah, that's one of the ones I saw. That doesn't look that crazy.
Like her right arm looks like it's like what is her right arm doing?
I think it's just shadow.
Oh, okay.
I think it's
All
just
right.
some
Well,
shadow.
well, kudos to her if she got that jacked. That's kind of wild because she's kind of small.
Yeah.
But yeah, obviously, like this trailer, I think the trailer looks great. I mean, I saw some of that like trash talk online post trailer drop on Monday, Tuesday. I just, people just need something to talk about. I think I really, I mean, like, what are you expecting when all like the whole crew is back? Like everything you liked about Ragnarok, if you liked Ragnarok, and even Thor's involvement in Infinity War and Endgame with the Guardians, like what did you expect otherwise? It's just the same kind of hang. But I did think it looks really good. Taika, I mean, he does come on, man. Like he's just getting started, I think. Like he's literally, I think he's in like the middle of the game right now. He's not even like peaked, I don't think yet. But there was a shot in the trailer though that like feels like that Marvel trickery immediately happening already, where like they've edited somebody out of the trailer or a character out of the trailer. But there's that shot where like it's like Thor, Korg, and on the like frame on the left, it's just like a big empty open space.
Yeah,
like it's framed completely inappropriate. Like and of course people were saying the same thing immediately. It's like, okay, well who's gonna be in that spot or who's there? So that's fun speculation for the next 4 months or whatever it is.
And the flip of that is that other shot that people are putting the comparison to the comic book frame that it's taken from.
Oh yeah,
couldn't look more like they just took this great image,
comic shot, with like that creature falling down.
There's a dead creature in the background, and then Thor, I believe, and somebody are standing on the little mountain in front
on the ledge.
But I saw an interesting. It's an interesting thing because you see people saying, "Oh my gosh, look at this." Comparison. This is great. They're including this image. This is a real sign that they're doing their homework with the comics. And then the flip of that is they really got to start compensating the comic creators more if they're basically grabbing shots from the comics, and it's like, oh yeah, that question has still yet to be resolved in a satisfying way. You'll occasionally hear about some comics creator that got treated really well by the MCU, but more often than not, you're hearing how, oh, they thanked me for creating this character that just made them $1 billion, but they didn't, they didn't invite me to the premiere or send me a buck. But no, I think we're all on the hook for Taika in general, but this movie does look super fun, and I enjoyed the involvement. Also, I think it's going to be fun to see the Guardians again and to kind of catch up with that thread, because the last time we saw Thor and the Guardians had sort of hooked up. So, in terms of the Marvel soap opera of just the continuing story, I think this is a fun little piece of the story that it'll be enjoyable to catch up with. So this is like all the fun, goofy characters, are in this one. So, well, speaking of fun, goofy characters, remember how hilarious Ezra Miller was as the Flash in Justice League?
Yeah,
all of his antics. He was, some of that was funny, but I feel like, he was an odd guy, but he might be an odd guy in life, as we're finding out.
He's committed to that comparison.
Yeah.
You immediately pulled it back. You immediately.
Well, I realized that I don't know if everyone found him as annoying as I did.
Yeah.
But he also did get a couple of laughs out of me. But the point is, Ezra Miller seems like a very messed up dude in his personal life, or at least a guy who's got some issues with how he reacts to certain situations. There have been restraining orders against him, and he's threatened people and stolen from people. And I don't know, what do you make of this? And I guess the bigger question is not so much what you think of Ezra Miller. I don't, we're not really going to judge him, but what does this mean for a film and a potential franchise that they were getting ready to launch around this guy? The Flash movie is still on the calendar. It's got a lot of things in it that people want to see, but what do you do when your star is, making that kind of news?
I don't understand why he keeps getting a million chances, and I can't help but wonder if other talent were to do such things, if they have such a long leash to do the thing. He's putting women in wrestling moves. He's like legitimately doing Streets of Rage.
There's
moves
video
on
of that. There's video of him like doing that. Like, yes.
So
I mean, and that's just in the last 2 weeks.
Right. Like,
don't forget that 2 years ago he choked a woman in a bar in Iceland.
That's what I'm talking about.
You're talking about that video?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he's
one I didn't know about. Yeah.
I'm sick of them.
at the stop though, like, you know, the all valid points. But if there's something going on with them, like I feel like they need to get help, or the
Yeah,
studio
of course.
needs to figure out how they can get help for them if they want help, and just kind of, that's the important thing, really. Obviously, you don't want this stuff happening to anybody as a, you know, to the victims or even what they're going through. But yeah, anything that happens like that kind of with that kind of frequency, like 2 weeks ago and now this week again, you know, to the point that Warner Brothers is like calling emergency meetings to discuss what to do about, you know, like John said, the Flash. But don't forget, he's also a part of the Fantastic Beasts franchise, which after last week's opening may not be much more of a franchise, but, you know, he is a prominent character in those films. But yeah, the future of the Flash is apparently really in flux, and obviously very important to DC and Warner Brothers. And I don't really know what they do with this. I mean, this movie's been, you know, delayed so many times and finally just recently finished. And like, you know, John said, there's a lot of stuff in this movie that I feel like people want to see, and characters that they want to see back, you know, on the screen. And I don't know. I think the next couple of weeks are going to be interesting because I don't know that they're going to go back in and reshoot stuff or recast or what, but I feel like they've got a big problem on their hands, especially like when they talked about what they want to try to do for the DC universe going forward.
Yeah.
You know, in terms of kind of having more oversight and kind of like a central figure kind of overseeing and directing what's going on there. Kind of like a, you know, they compare like the Kevin Feige character that, you know, or that right. Kevin Feige figure that Marvel has. Yeah, I just feel really bad. I mean, I don't, you know, that this is happening for obviously the people that it's happened to, but there's obviously something really going on in their life that they need help, and I hope they get help for them. And I hope Warner Brothers is a big part of that, not just for their business interests, but also just for the talent that they should be taken care of.
And yes, I appreciate you, Steve, for using the correct pronouns for Ezra Miller. It's they them are the preferred pronouns there.
Right.
So I misspoke earlier.
Yeah, I just think there has to be some standard for treatment, especially when it comes to women. Like, you know, if you're hitting on women like that, I feel like if there's supposedly all this progress being made. But when it comes to just things like this, there should be no tolerance for it. You know, it doesn't matter what you identify, who you identify. That doesn't matter. You should not be hitting on women, and that should be punished. You know, and if it doesn't feel like there's ever anything that happens, like Shia LaBeouf got into all this crazy stuff with FKA twigs. She said she got an STD and all this stuff. She got assaulted. I feel like I didn't hear anything about it beyond that. Like, you know, beyond, I mean, there was a little bit of a like, screw this guy, but I feel like there has to be some standard. Like, there has to be some, like, are we getting people out of here for this? Like, is this going to keep happening? We have a tape that we could look at. You could Google Ezra attacking a woman before. Like, nobody keeps. Every time Ezra's name comes up, somebody should be like, hey, remember this? Remember Ezra did a wrestling move on this woman? Remember this? I'm just saying, like, people do it for less things.
And how do you market like a family-friendly sci-fi like tentpole movie if that's the headline? I mean, I'm not saying it takes priority over it. I'm saying that's the question that Warner Brothers has right now, because they can't Kevin Spacey this thing, you know?
No.
It's the star. But and also the Harry Potter thing that you mentioned, Steve, is a very intriguing thing, because I don't know that I've ever heard a studio announce. I mean, we've always known that, but I don't know if I've heard like a studio announce, oh, we're going to see what happens with this movie before we do that fourth one that we said we were going to do, you know?
Yeah.
That just feels like a very strange thing, like sort of a bulletproof franchise. And that's not to say that this movie won't eventually turn a profit or make enough money worldwide that it's okay. But still, it obviously did not do what they were. Even the reduced projections, it did not make. And I mean, I didn't watch the second Fantastic Beasts movie. I thought the trailer of this, I thought it looked kind of cool in some spots. I was interested to see a little bit of it, but you know, not like not like pulled towards watching it as quick as possible the way I am with some other movies like it. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I thought it was interesting that even the kind of diehard fans, I saw a very, very tepid showing amongst like just my social media connections who I know are Harry Potter fans. It seems like very few people are interested in like publicly declaring their love for it. And I guess maybe that's another thing right now. Maybe the J.K. Rowling of that is part of this, is related to what we're saying about Ezra. Just the effect of how someone like that, how they can affect the properties that they're connected to. There's a little bit of a dimming of the light for it.
5 movies, man. There were supposed to be 5 of them.
Yeah, so, it's crazy that they announced 5 movies.
Yeah,
you know,
insane. So somebody had a theory that I really liked, that maybe JK should sell it off the way that George Lucas did. And just kind of like let somebody else, a trusted hand, handle the series from now on. And I'm kind of feeling like maybe she should. She's going to tank this thing if she keeps talking. You know, look, people are entitled to their opinions. And I think that's another thing. Like, we have to live in this world where like people can say whatever they want, but you're going to get a reaction out of people, right?
Right.
She should be able to say whatever she wants, but that's going to affect her bottom line. This world that she's created over 20 years is being demolished by some off-color opinions.
By some shit she doesn't even need to be saying.
Yeah, why
about, you know?
This is not your wheelhouse. Why is this your wheelhouse? Why is this if it was something that affected you directly, I'd be like, look, I get it. But this is just randomly, she's like, look, by the way, and she keeps coming back to it.
I know it's
like,
the who asked you thing. It really is like
so crazy.
It's like John Cleese was in trouble for saying some stupid shit at a film festival that we were talking about, and that's another one that's like, John Cleese, you should not be making the news at all. We shouldn't be hearing a headline about what you said at all. You know. So yeah, why do some of these people why do they want to mess with their legacy like that? Mm-hmm. But anyway, I guess it's like a toxic person that's attached to this thing. So it'll be interesting to see what Warner Brothers does with this Flash movie, if they kind of soft pedal it because there's a bad association with the star. But also, are people going to want to watch a fun-loving character that they think in life might be some kind of monster, especially when the stories about Ezra, I mean, you've heard about like I forget the writer-director team that was responsible for Game Night. They were on this movie at one point, and they've come out and basically said that dealing with Ezra Miller was horrible, that they were just, just a bully on the set and pitching fits and all that stuff. So,
I mean, I got to be honest, like I would be shocked if they have any future in these movies. I mean, I don't know how they're going to do it, but I think if Warner Brothers has anything to say about it, I think beyond trying to get them help financially, business sense wise, I don't think they have a future in these movies anymore. I really don't. I think that, I mean, the Fantastic Beasts issue may have resolved itself, unfortunately, because I don't know that they're going to make those 4th and 5th movies anytime soon. But the Flash is a big part of what they want to do with the DC universe. And fortunately, they've already played with it a little bit, in terms of Flashpoint and what they can do with that. It might present an opportunity to have some sort of replacement in place. And I know people have already been calling for the guy that plays him on the show, possibly, which they've already had that crossover before. It's just it's just so disappointing, man. Like
it really is,
and on every front, honestly, beyond the movies, it's it's just really sad and disappointing. So yeah, hope they figure it out, and hopefully they get the help they need.
Yeah. Good luck.
I guess we can stick with a DC character, but maybe move on to our movie that we want to talk about a little bit. Everyone's seen The Batman, and now if you're listening, you can see it at home too. You can see it on HBO Max and on PVOD if you've unearthed that secret. Ronald was saying earlier they're trying to keep it secret. that it's on PVOD.
I mean, I just saw a stat that like it's apparently like maybe going to supplant like Spider-Man when the PVOD. So I think people are finding it.
Yeah. I
mean,
that's good.
That's good.
It's plastered. So when I open up that Apple TV app, it's like
Okay,
but
good.
it took a while. I'm telling you, it
So
took a while.
I was just completely just not looking for it, I assume.
No. I'm saying like Tuesday, it wasn't up like that. It
Oh,
was
okay.
like they gave it like a day.
Maybe they gave HBO Max like a head start.
I think they did.
Because I did see that like what did that some number just popped up on my phone as we're talking about the numbers, and it was like 790,000 people watched it on Monday on HBO Max.
Whoa,
790,000, which is
that's a lot.
I think that's a pretty big number for
Heck
a
yeah.
feature premiere on that service. At least they haven't really given any context to that, but that's awesome. I mean, I'm just saying I don't know what that compares like other movies that have like come to the service like after a theatrical run. You know, like that's the first big one that bypassed the day and date stuff that they were doing before.
Yeah.
Yeah. So film? Yeah, the film. And we talked about it briefly, but we didn't want to get too much into it before Ronald was able to see it. So why don't you kind of jump in, Ronald? I mean, what did you think of the Batman?
I thought it was great. I think what was really hard. I mean, let's be honest, man. We saw what many consider a perfect trilogy several years ago in the Christopher Nolan trilogy. You know, it wasn't perfect in that every frame, every story, you know, twist and turn was perfect, but in terms of general reception of the Christopher Nolan trilogy, it is held in high esteem. So coming into this film, man, I had a lot of apprehension. You know, it was Robert Pattinson, who I was, you know, we're fans of, but a different feel to this Batman. You know, it's taking place in a different time as this Batman. This Gotham is a little different. Right. And I wound up feeling like I think the approach to this was genius. I think that it touched on, you know, Matt Reeves's approach of making Batman a detective first. You know, especially a couple of things. It wasn't an origin story, which I loved. I love that it wasn't an origin story. Kind of coming in when he's kind of regarded as like a weirdo in a suit, and still having that, like, you know, the Gotham PD doesn't really like him, and the general public really doesn't like him. His final form, the Cape Crusader, as people know him in Gotham eventually, feels like, you know, he's on his way to that, but he's still figuring things out. He makes some cool mistakes. I was like, shit, he shouldn't have did that. And then it winds up kicking him in the ass later on. Like, this is a raw Batman. And I think that approach, you know, Matt Reeves humanizing him. This is another thing that I think I was not ready for. Humanizing him in a way that I just wasn't ready for. You know, him getting a little jealous at a part, you know, him getting, I thought those were cool little steps towards what I'm hoping is going to be a trilogy that'll really shake up comic book films and just films in general. The Riddler was really fucking cool to me. He didn't look anything like I thought he was going to look, but Penguin was so cool. Like, and you know, I feel like the Catwoman angle was a little underdeveloped, but I love the dynamic between them. You know, Zoe Kravitz jumps off at the screen. So overall, I really enjoyed it. I didn't feel every bit of the 3 hours, but there was a point like midway through, I was like, I got it from Aaron, man. I'll tap the Apple TV just to see how long, you know, how much longer. And I'm like, halfway through the story, we have this much left. So I felt a little weird about that. But overall, man, I thought it was great. What you guys think?
I mean, I rewatched it this week, and I love it. I mean, honestly, the more I sit with it and rewatching it, I really do think it's pretty amazing. And for all the reasons that you just said, I too like feel that I really like the way that like Robert Pattinson is really just like Batman in this movie. Like he there's not a lot of Bruce Wayne,
Mm-mm.
and there's not a lot of differentiation between the characters of each. So I thought that was like one of the more unique parts of the movie. And I think that that's really what stood out to me, and the idea of what it could become going forward, especially where we see the character of Batman going towards the end of the movie, what he, kind of the realizations that he comes across for himself as that character, and maybe what he could do as Bruce Wayne to help in other ways that he never really was doing before. So, I mean, that piece of this movie, while it's not an origin story, I really like the idea of spending so much time with Batman, like more than in any other Batman movie that's ever existed, I think.
Yeah.
And in most of those scenes, like, I thought it worked incredibly well. And yeah, I mean, like, Robert Pattinson it's a completely different take on Batman, and I think that it's unique, it's different, and it's good. I mean, like, I don't know where it falls into the hierarchy of Batman, rankings in my mind just yet, because I want to see more of what happens when, what he does as Bruce Wayne in the films going forward, to see that balance and that the differences between the two characters, which is some of the most interesting stuff with Batman, I think. But there's so many great sequences in this movie that I just think the idea, the filmmaking that happens, when they're doing some of these practical stunts, and I was watching a bunch of the behind the scenes stuff on YouTube, and some of this like additional stuff that's on HBOMax, and it's just so impressive, like the time and the craft that went into making some of that as practical as possible. Specifically the car chase sequence, like with the Penguin and Batman and in the Batmobile. I thought was just awesome. And that scene, like when they're outside of that warehouse in the rain and the Batmobile revs up and starts lighting up like the hood and everything, I fucking love that scene so much.
It's so good.
Like just that introduction of the vehicle, of just like the intimidation of that sequence, and like, I don't know, just like how he kind of dips out of the sequence because he's there with Catwoman, and he's a part of the scene, and then he's not, and you're like, where is he? And you're like, oh my God, he's in the fucking Batmobile. And it just was in the theater, I felt that way, but even home watching it on my, decent setup, the sound and everything, it was just, I that whole sequence all the way to the point that they flip the car and he's walking up in the silhouette of the fire. I just thought that was so epic. I love that scene so much. But yeah, ultimately, I love this movie so much. I can't wait to see if and what. I'm sure they will announce something soon, but because the movie has done very well domestically and worldwide, and I think it'll do great on PVOD and HBOMax. So I can't wait till they announce some more of what's next. And I hope Matt Reeves is involved, because I think he's a big part of why this is so good.
Well, there is like a cohesion to it, and I mean, I'm kind of now remembering when we talked about it before, Steve, that I guess I'm worried I'm just going to repeat what I said then too, but I didn't really want this movie. Like, I didn't want a darker, grittier Batman. I didn't want a more grounded, but I just didn't. I mean, I wasn't wishing for it to go in that direction. I wasn't wishing for it to go in any particular direction. But when they said, "Oh, this is the darkest one yet," there was a part of me that was like, "I'm just so disinterested in that idea." Not the idea that a dark movie could be good, but the idea that that's your concept, that's your angle. But I don't really think. I don't know. There's a part of me that thinks this, and I think this is what I said before, is that it's like it's comic booky though, in a way that a lot of the other takes on this character haven't been. So even though they do go so dark and so self-serious, and I've heard people that have complained about the writing in this movie as being kind of like the weak point of it, that like it's stilted or it's cheesy or whatever. And I think that you just have to buy into the world of this, because I was shocked at all this stuff that could have seemed cheesy and self-important, how it worked in this context. And it really made me feel like, and I think I said this before, it really made me feel like I was reading a graphic novel, and it had like the narration blocks that are in a character's voice, and there is something kind of self-important about that stuff. But I felt like I was totally there for it. And like from that opening sequence that takes you into the idea of that the city, there's fear out there, that this criminal element is already aware of Batman, and they're already kind of looking for him where he might be. That idea that he doesn't have to be everywhere because he could be anywhere. I think that's the line. is such a
Yeah.
great idea. And I think that's where I knew this movie had me in its tone, was because normally a movie that had the line that they look for me in the shadows, but I am the shadows, or something like that. Normally that line would be enough for me to like remember that line and then come out of it and then call everyone I know and make fun of the fact that line was in a movie, just because it seems so, but it got me. Like, that was when I knew this movie, the tone was right, was because I was listening to that thought and going, that's true of Batman, that you might look for him in the shadows, but in some way he kind of is every shadow. Like, I guess I'm just saying it got over that whatever guard I have up against something that's kind of self-serious or self-important or up its own ass or just repetitive or whatever. It just got through it. So like, I was kind of amazed at that aspect, and I still find it kind of undefinable why this movie clicks so well in that way, that it really does feel like you're in one of those classic comics. I think it has to do with how much Gotham is a part of the story. I think it has to do with how many different people we meet and how many different parts of the city we're connected to. I mean, Catwoman, who I did enjoy a lot in this, you know, they don't go out of their way to create this iconic kind of camp Catwoman like we've seen in the past. They make her grittier and more grounded, but she still has little moments that are kind of comic booky and fun. The idea that she has cats and she drinks milk and all that shit, you know, that's kind of fun. But I don't know. I just think every character from her to the, you know, to the mobsters that we meet, to the cops, there was just enough life around the edges in this that even with the focus on Batman, and as you said, Ronald, the kind of brilliant move of focusing on how awkward not just how he looks awkward. I always thought Christian Bale looked fucking awkward walking into a room. A bunch of cops are poking around, and he comes in and he's like, "Commissioner, what's going on?" You know, like,
Yeah.
it always felt kind of silly, but no one acknowledged it. And I think this movie acknowledges it by having people look at him like he's a freak, but also Robert Pattinson, his eyes in the suit, you can tell, like, he plays the awkwardness without changing his facial expression, without creating like a comic moment out of it. He plays the awkwardness of Batman. I don't think I've ever seen anyone try that before, because it's not like he's tripping and shit, but he's playing a guy who, he's 2 or 3 years into it and he's kind of figuring it out, and he hasn't become the seasoned guy we've seen before, but he's not the brand new neophyte that maybe you were expecting. We certainly didn't have to see the early days and the decision to look like a bat and all that stuff that we've seen before. And they spared us the parents getting killed in the alley. I don't know. They did so many smart things, and yet, as I've said, connected it to this larger mythos of Batman, which is that every great Batman story sort of has a reason why he keeps doing it, and a reason why he keeps fighting for Gotham. Because he could just leave. He could split. I mean, that's the thing. This guy could just say, fuck this town, this shitty, scary town. I'm getting out of here.
Yeah.
And this movie, again, it kind of hinges on that idea that what is Batman, what's the ultimate thing that makes him a hero, that makes him who he is? It's that he sticks around and he fights for this godforsaken city. And this movie made its own version of a case for why that would be important, not just to people who want more Batman stories, but why Batman himself would be so true to this city. I mean, I agree with you. I want to see more in this world. I at least want to see another attempt to maybe bring some of that comic book flavor into another one of these stories. But I love that it was a murder mystery, and even though Batman's detective work, it's not like the most sophisticated, crazy detective work you've ever seen. This movie is presented as a story where a guy's picking up clues and he's going one step further, and that's just a good model for this kind of tale. And I think the story does have the goods. There's a certain point where you find out a few things, and there's some kind of creepy reveals about like Batman's past and the history of Gotham. There's a lot to play with there in the comics, and I would hope that their next movie, there's a storyline called The Court of Owls that has a lot to do with like these power brokers in Gotham and like the secret society. Now that we've kind of broken through the idea that Bruce's dad was some kind of moral paragon, the next step in the second movie that would be really fun would be to get into, okay, who are all the other Thomas Waynes out there, and what kind of moves have they made, and what do they think of Bruce coming up in the city. So yeah, lots of fun. And also John Turturro, who's just on a tear lately. He was
so good. Falcone, man. Like, and I was surprised that they revealed what they revealed. I mean, you know, anybody that like watches or reads Batman or even watches the cartoon finds out a very cool fact about the story. And, you know, they handled it in such a cool way that I was surprised that they put it in there. I was like, I thought this was like a second movie sort of thing,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And then the dynamic with Gordon and Batman just felt so fucking like that must have been how he got hired, man. Beyond him just being in the suit. There's something about Gordon commissioner. Well, he's not even going to commissioner at this point. He's basically a beat cop, a detective, having a conversation with Batman, and you know he's trying to get to know him through conversation. Batman's giving him nothing, and he's like, "I don't know you. I don't really know you, but I trust you. You're very trustworthy." But like this battle that kind of goes on, and the way that he fucking talks to Pennyworth, fucking
Alfred.
The way he talks to Alfred, like the beginnings of that relationship, I just love the way that it was done, and I feel like
I want more
Reeves,
Alfred. If I had a complaint,
so much
it would
more.
be that I thought we would get more Alfred.
Give me like 15 more minutes of him, because this one is like, you know, it's no secret that Alfred has had a past in the military, so he's like, you know, arms expert. He can fight a little bit. You know, him being cast as Alfred means a lot to me. It means that we're gonna watch him kick some ass at some point, which is very different than some of the Alfreds that we've seen in the past. So like this Alfred is an Alfred that I've been very familiar with in the comic books, and I'm curious to see what they're gonna do. So like, yeah, you're right. Like, give me like 10 more minutes of Alfred, and I would have been like, man, you know, Andy Serkis, his voice is just great anyway.
But I like that they were at odds. I like that they gave them a different dynamic than we've ever seen them have, you know? Again, it's that whole thing that they do in the movies, I guess, occasionally of saying, well, you know what the dynamic is. We're going to show you a reason why that dynamic is meaningful. So if you were hoping to see Batman and Alfred have the kind of relationship that you love from other things, at the end of this movie, they're more on the path to that because they've kind of had a breakthrough together. But at the beginning of this, you know, they're both... Like Alfred blames himself for so many things that have gone wrong, and Bruce sees him as like a pathetic attempt at like trying to replace his dad. You know, he doesn't really seem to be respecting him much at the beginning of the movie, and at the end, that's changed through what has happened. So I don't know. I think those little things, you don't necessarily need to see every bit of an origin, but it's fun when they pick something to say, well, let's explore that dynamic and how it might have been different at some point. And Gordon's a great example. Yeah, he's not commissioner yet, but he's the version that you love from the comics. He's the guy who gets involved and he gets scrappy. I mean, he can't do much, but Gordon's awesome. I mean, really, he's one of the coolest characters in the whole Batman, you know, mythos, especially in some of those key stories, because he is like the idea of the one good cop, you know, in Gotham. It's a kind of fun concept, especially when you realize how vulnerable he is and also how much he's paid for it. Like he's had a lot of death around him. In the comics. So
if they include one particular situation in this, I would love if they got that crazy. But he's had some real issues. One thing I wanted to say was like HBO Max typically skimps on the like boom and visuals when it comes to like 4K stuff. Man, you know, I bought it PVOD. It's like $30. You know, iTunes is one of the better qualities in terms of just how to watch a film. Man, I turned on the HBO Max version. I think Matt Reeves was like, if you're going to show it on the service, it has to be like boomy, like the Atmos has to be Atmos. And, you know, sometimes they could call it Atmos and it doesn't move around the way that it needs to, you know, like it doesn't sound the way that it should. But this is like exceptional. Like I would suggest that somebody sees it on HBO Max. And I typically don't. Like if I'm like iTunes or HBO Max, I'm typically gonna say iTunes almost every time. But this is a treat. It's like you get your bang for your buck for this one there. It's definitely worth watching on HBO Max.
So you're saying you might remember my son's friend. One of his friends said that it was mid, and the other one said that it was heat.
Yeah.
Which friend do you agree with? Or do you think the Batman was mid, or do you think it
was heat? It was heat. It was Heat. You know what's funny? A lot of kids don't even know what mid is referring to. It's quality of weed, but
No, I
but
know.
people
And,
don't.
you know what's funny is like talking to a kid who's like saying that you can't say that because then it's
You
one of
can't be
those
like,
little
"This is
tests
about-"
of like, well, if
You're
you're
right.
if you're now introducing this concept
Right.
to him,
You don't
if you
even
explain
want
it to him, you don't need to.
It's
Right.
so funny. I heard a kid say it a little while ago. I'm like, do you know what you're talking?
Ronald, this
Okay.
is like that thing where they play the intro music for like porn sites to see
Yeah.
who turns their head because the people that turn their head know that that's the intro music from a porn site. I think
Right,
any
right.
reference to like drugs, even though they're becoming, weed's becoming a bit more accepted out there, I still feel like it's a little bit of a test. It's like, no, don't be the guy who says, "Oh wait, I'll tell you where."
Well, actually,
Guy. You don't want to be that guy.
You don't want to be, yeah, exactly. We talked about this before, like recognizing a porn actress in something. You don't want to be the one who points that out. So you also don't want to be the one to define mid for a 14-year-old.
Right.
But no, I guess I'm leaning towards Heat too. I mean, I had thought that maybe my feelings towards this movie had cooled a little bit since I had like a really fun outing at the movies and I saw it with my son and a friend of his. This was the first time he saw it, and these kids were both really into it. And we were just the whole family was primed to see what was up with the new Batman movie. I kind of thought that my enthusiasm had cooled a little, but talking about it has gotten me all jazzed about all the stuff that worked so well. And we haven't said Paul Dano by name in this conversation, but he just his pantheon of creeps. He just added another good character to it.
Yeah.
But that's another thing that makes this movie work is that it does play up the creep factor of Arkham Asylum and the sort of folks that might end up there. And I kind of hope I hope that they stay in that vein. I hope that if they do a sequel to this, they stick to that idea, because I do think creepy is a good way to go with Batman villains.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Cool. So
is it Heat, Steve?
No doubt. Yeah, for sure. What's above Heat, guys? I mean, I loved it.
It was so good.
God, what is above Heat? What would you say?
I don't know.
But
Plasma?
yeah, HBOMax, like Ronald said, if you subscribe to it, it's on there. Amazing quality. Again, also on PVOD, if you'd prefer to just rent it or buy it, you can do that. But it is available now digitally and still in theaters. If you want the theatrical, it's still out there making money. So choose your own adventure there. Is there anything you guys want to mention? Anything else that you've seen recently since the last episode that you wanted to recommend or turn the audience onto?
Not tired.
Well, I don't know if this is turning them onto it, but I should mention Better Call Saul came back this week. And if you go to FYIZ, that's just the call letters for my podcast feed where I put other shows than Movie Schmovie. There will be an episode of my Better Call Saul recap show, Saul Searching, up on the feed this week. So when this episode of Movie Schmovie comes out, that will already be out. And that's just talking about the first 2 episodes of Better Call Saul's 6th season that aired on Monday. And it's great show, and it's back. And I don't need to tell you that it's great at this point, but it's still fun to speculate. And in fact, the fact that it's kind of ending, it makes it, it's especially fun now to try to figure out like what pieces are they going to weave together from this.
Yeah.
Because in some ways this show has been a continuation of Breaking Bad, so there's a lot of character threads to deal with. And, one thing this show has always done is handle that kind of thing well. So it'll be interesting to see what they have in mind for the ending of this saga. So yeah, FYIZ, wherever you look for podcasts, and the show is called Saul Searching. So it's a single podcast feed that has lots of shows on it. So
Cool.
In fact, I think you guys have agreed to be on a future one.
Yeah.
I'm super down.
I wanted to recommend 2 things real quick. One, in theaters, I went and saw Michael Bay's new film Ambulance with
How was it?
Jake Gyllenhaal. Dude, I thought it was so much fun.
I cannot wait to see that movie.
I'll say, like, whatever you think of Michael Bay, like in general, I like most of his movies, at least in terms of for the entertainment of it. But it's like, I think top tier Michael Bay movies, whatever that means to you, in my opinion, if somebody likes his movies, I mean, it's silly and it's, a whole lot of extra, but I think that's why I like his movies. And Gyllenhaal is like completely off the rails in it. But it's a lot of fun, really, really some wild action sequences, some amazing drone photography. Like they apparently hired some like well, I don't know, like drone champions, like international competitions that they have, like in terms of racing drones or whatever it might be, and like they basically shot some scenes in the movie with drones, and it looks amazing.
Wow.
But yeah, I mean, it's a big action Michael Bay blockbuster kind of movie. But I thought it was really good, and I had a lot of fun watching it. So that's in theaters right now. I don't know when that'll be coming to a streaming option, because I don't think it did that well at all last weekend. But I think it's a Universal movie, so I think they have that window. Like after 14 or 15 days, they can decide what they're doing with a PVOD option. So it may be available sooner than later, but it's in theaters now. And then the other thing I wanted to mention was a series that I just happened to stumble across on Epix called From.
Oh yeah.
Have either of you watched that?
I watched a little bit of the first one. I thought it was really creepy.
Yeah, so like if it's got like a Lost meets Twilight Zone kind of vibe, and I think it's from some of the people that made Lost, even with Hera Perno in the one of the lead roles. But if you're looking for something like that, I mean, it's 10 episodes. It just finished up the first season. Hopefully they make more of this show, because I thought it was pretty good, and definitely has that, like, these people end up in this town. They don't know how they got there. They thought they got lost and they can't leave. And there are these creatures that come at night, and they have to like lock themselves in their houses, and they have these totems that block them from coming into houses.
Oh.
And then the bigger picture is of like, where are they? Yeah, exactly. Similar. Like, where are they? Like, and that's kind of what they're starting to explore towards the end of the season. But some really creepy like sequences, like with these creatures trying to get in the houses where these people are safe. Because the creatures are really just, they're people, but they're not people. And I don't know. I watched the first couple episodes and I was like, yeah, I'm in. I like how creepy this is. And yeah, again, that's on Epix. And that's the first season just ended. 10 episodes. It's out there if you want to check it out.
Yeah. Good atmosphere in the one that I saw.
Yeah. That's all I got. You good, Ronald?
It's one thing. RoboCop, Arrow Video just released a 4K RoboCop. It looks incredible. It's crispy. It's beautiful. So if you like RoboCop and you want it in the best quality, invest in the physical media. It looks beautiful. So
is it RoboCrisp?
It's RoboCrisp. that's
my favorite cereal.
It's RoboCrisp. And then in metallic letters.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
All right, cool.
We did it.
There it is, guys. Movieshmovie.com is the website. You can go there to subscribe to the podcast. You can jump into any of the platforms that you might have on your mobile devices and subscribe. You can listen to the podcast even right on the site. You can find all the past episodes there, and all the links to our different social media channels. We'll be back next week with a new episode about what I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe the We Own the City series on HBOMax or HBO. We'll be talking about that, I know, but what else? I'm not sure, but you can count on that for sure. But yeah, that's it. Thanks for listening. As always, you've made our day. Thanks.
Bye.